excited for this match. I am a big fan of both of these players, and I personally love this build of Sultai that Shota has brought. Specifically, I love it in this matchup. Elder Gargaroth, one of the best cards Sultai can have against this Temur Adventures deck. Typically, you see it in the sideboard as a 2 or 3 of, but Shota has actually just said, all right, I'm going to have 3 copies in the main deck, which I think is a huge boost to the win percentage of Sultai in this matchup, and post-board things only get better for him. So I think I think Shota with Sultai has come prepared, and I'm a little bit scared for Shahar's chances in this matchup.
Shahar, looking at this opening hand of triple Bonecrusher Giant and Edgel Innkeeper, what a stompy opening hand for Shahar.
Oh no. Yeah, this hand is aggressive, but it's also a little slow, as it were. It's once you get to the point where you're just casting giant after giant, if Shota has already gotten to the point where he has played that Elder Gargaroth, which he will be able to do on turn 4 thanks to the Cultivate that was just drawn, I'm not really sure these Bonecrusher Giants are going to necessarily be enough to get him over the finish line.
Well, Marnie, I'm not the, biggest maths expert in the world, but 2 + 2 + 2 sounds like 6 to me, so Shahar maybe can string together all of these stomps to take out that Elder Gargaroth. Meanwhile, for Shota, turn number 2 has that Maze Mind Tome down, is scrying away exactly what his deck wants to be doing in these early turns.
Yeah, this is pretty much the best case scenario for Shota. He's going to be able to cast an Elder Gargaroth while at 19 life. Shahar will play a Bonecrusher Giant on his next turn to draw a card and develop a 4/3. It is nice that he has access to more stomps, so he can threaten the Elder Gargaroth with an attack and a 1.5 for 1 from his side of things, but that would depend on Shota blocking, which he doesn't necessarily have to do in his position, considering he'll be pretty comfortable just trading blows with that Gargaroth.
Yeah, Gargaroth is the archetypal, he attack, he protect. And we see it hanging out there in hand for Shota. Only a couple more lands off the top though. Shota does have that Maze Mind Tome to refill the hand and search for the resources that he needs going on into the later half of the game. Elder Gargaroth comes down, and that is going to be dominating the battlefield for the foreseeable.
Yeah, this is pretty much the worst case scenario for Shahar. He hasn't drawn the 4th land until now to be able to develop a second Edgewall Innkeeper before playing that Bonecrusher Giant to try to draw cards. Goldspan Dragon doesn't really attack well into an Elder Gargaroth, though again, he does have that 3rd copy of Stomp. And for Shota, with that Binding the Old Gods, he's going to be able to safely attack into this board, either draw a card or make it 3/3, depending on how he feels about his position. And with that Emergent Ultimatum in hand, I don't think this game 1 is going to last much longer, Hayu.
Yeah, 6th lands on the battlefield, 7th untapped source in hand for Shota, Emergent Ultimatum off the top. What a sweet spot to be in for the Japanese superstar.
Yeah, I think Elder Gargaroth is either the best or maybe second best card in this matchup from Sultai. The only point of contention being Coma, which Shota also has access to from the sideboard for game 2. And when you have it on turn 4 like this in the first game, it's just not something the Temur Adventures is prepared to deal with in the main deck.
And, if you look at what's going on Shahar's side of the battlefield, it's not like Shahar's deck isn't treating him well. He's got multiple Edgewall Innkeepers down, drawing multiple cards off each of these adventure creatures, but what are you going to do when it's Emergent Ultimatum time?
Yeah, this Emergent Ultimatum is backbreaking. Shota can easily get something like Kiora, Best the Sea God, Shadow's Verdict, and Auron's Epiphany, and no matter what 2 cards Shahar gives him, it's just going to be game-ending.
Let's see what Shota goes for. Oh, Marnie. What a call.
I do what I can.
Shahar says, nope, I'm not going to let you resolve any of these. Let's go to game number 2. Looking at the players' sideboards now. For Shota, does he even need to change very much?
He gets to become better. He gets to take out some of the cards that aren't great in the matchup, like that Midnight Clock that he is teching in the main deck. Instead, gets access to cards like Coma, cards like Shark Typhoon, if that's the direction he wants to go. Counterspell's not typically great in this matchup. We may just see him actually have none in. If he's going to bring one in, it would likely be Disdainful Stroke as the only one, as it does hit some of the more problematic cards like Goldspan Dragon. You do see Shahar actually taking out the copies of Alrund's Epiphany already in the deck,
Mm.
expecting Shota to bring in some counter spells and not wanting to have the expensive blue sorcery. But I think the way that Shota may sideboard can pivot around that. And yeah, I really think Shota came prepared for this matchup. You see him pivoting around those counter spells as well. 3 copies of Emergent Ultimatum, part of the consideration for the sideboarding out here. And this just looks like it's getting worse for Shahar post-board. Polukranos, an awesome creature against Temur Adventures. It's a 6/6 that can just start removing those Edgewall Innkeepers at minimum cost, attacking those Goldspan Dragons, and Shahar can only watch.
Can I ask you, Manny, why would you side out a card like the Great Henge here against a control deck?
Part of it is just expecting not to keep creatures on the battlefield. If you can't reduce the cost of the Great Henge with something like a Lovestruck Beast or a Kazandu Mammoth remaining on the battlefield, then you're stuck with a 9 mana card. Even if it's costing something like 6 or 7, that's still a problematic amount to be paying against a deck that, if you just tap out, they're going to try to resolve Emergent Ultimatum. Plus, you're not really playing a value-oriented game plan. Shota set the pace of play. Elder Gargaroth, now Coma and Polukranos. Shota wants to be the aggressor. He's not letting Shahar dictate the pace of play in this
What?
match as you would normally expect.
Manny, I think you may have made some mistake there. Shota Yasooka, not known for being the aggressor very often. But as we look at the opening turns of this game, Shahar gets that Princess token down on turn number 1 from Lovestruck Beast, miscast Clothis and Goldspan Dragon to work with.
Yeah, this is a pretty decent hand from Shahar, specifically having Clothis on turn 3 go unanswered by Shota, which there's no counterspell, it is going to go unanswered, means that thanks to that Fabled Passage already in Shahar's hand, he's going to be able to ramp out a turn 4 Goldspan Dragon. That is one of the nice ways to be able to pressure Shota and try to snowball the game in his favor, but Shota already has the answer in the Binding the Old Gods, so unless Shahar finds some amount of follow-up, the turn 4 Goldspan Dragon may not be enough to get the job done here in this game.
Shota passes with 2 mana open, double Omen of the Sea in hand.
Now, because Shahar didn't play a Fabled Passage last turn, he does not actually have the ability to use Clothis for ramp this next turn. The ability of Clothis will go on the stack before he's able to play a Fabled Passage and activate it. So now, because of the sequencing, he will have to go with the Lovestruck Beast instead, which means the Goldspan Dragon not in the books until turn 5 now.
Interesting to see Shahar, think about which of these 3 mana creatures to prioritize there, because you would imagine getting Clothis down underneath the counterspells can be so backbreaking against these slower strategies.
Yeah, it's the type of card that can really compound the advantage for you turn after turn if you get it down early. So the fact that the sequencing from Shahar led to this line it makes sense. You don't really want to be playing Clothis if there's no cards in either player's graveyard for that turn and you're not ramping with it. Get the Lovestruck Beast down now, and fortunately Shota put the defenses down. Shahar, I don't think he's quite aware of how Shota sideboarded for this matchup. He may be expecting more counterspells than there actually will be from Shota's side of things.
I mean, Shota, just a master of playing these types of strategies, these slower, resource-based battles. I'm thinking back especially to that iconic matchup against Carlos Ramal in Pro Tour Kaladesh. That was just when I fell in love with his style of play. Ooh, Coma on top of the library there for Shota Yasooka.
Yeah, this is a really tough choice. As I said, Koma in contention to be the absolute #1 best card in this matchup from Sultai. However, Shota is currently only on 4 mana, so it's a bit away, and he's already at 12 life, threatening to go down to 10 thanks to this Clothis. Can Binding Lovestruck be? So Koma could be as early as 2 turns away here, but depending on how much pressure Shahar puts on in these 2 turns, especially with that Brazen Borrower we see in Shahar's hand, Shota may just die before he gets to that Coma, which is why he was considering just putting it on the bottom.
Alright, here we go. Shota Yasooka is tapped out, so free reign for Shahar Shenhar to deploy his threats, and it is going to be Goldspan Dragon this turn.
Yeah, you saw Shahar actually opt to forego 2 damage to make an extra mana from the Clothis here. This not only allows him to play this land, but he gets to keep up now either Petty Theft plus Miscast or Saw It Coming, essentially making him safe against anything Shota plays. And considering Shota was looking to play Elder Gargaroth this next turn, now with this Saw It Coming available, Shahar can just counter the Gargaroth, untap, Clothis will deal 2, and the damage on board is enough to close out this game. So I think Shahar just has it.
Expertly maneuvered here by Shahar Shenhar in game number 2. And you can really see why both of these players are 8-1 in our tournament today. As a reminder for our viewers, 12 is the magic number today, so as soon as you hit 12 wins, you are into the top 8. And both of these players are going to be looking to do that as soon as they can. Extinction Event goes on the stack.
Yeah, Shota trying to represent the mystical dispute here with that remaining blue mana. See if he can just try to get Shahar, but Shahar's not going to fall for it. He knows that he's feeling good about this position, and Miscast countering the Extinction Event will be enough to get the job done.
And, Shota recognizing that as well, quickly scooping up game number 2. And Mani, a few minutes in and we're already seeing a decider.
Yeah, this is just the nature of the matchup here. Again, Shota isn't really relying on the late game power of the emergent ultimatums, partially because he doesn't expect to get there. We do see a minor adjustment on the play rather than the draw. He is bringing in 1 copy of Elspeth's Nightmare again. That's because on the play, you can answer that Edgewall Innkeeper from the Temur Adventures deck before they get to turn 3 to cast that adventure creature. So a card that is much better from Sultai on the play than on the draw. And that's part of the reason we see Shota making that minor adjustment. Now, once he's back on the play, this should go better for Shota. We saw that game. It was a matter of a turn. If Shota had gotten to cast Elder Gargaroth before Shahar was able to get that Goldspan Dragon on the battlefield, that game would look entirely different. But because Shahar was on the play, that game went as well as it did for Temur Adventures.
What a very adventurous hand indeed for Shahar Shenhar in game number 3. Double Brazen Borrower, double Bone Crusher Giant. No Edgewall Innkeeper though to go with them.
Yeah, this hand is not optimal. It faces a lot of the problems we saw from the first hand, which is it's very reactive. It does have the value in the adventure creatures, but you're not doing anything overly impressive. You're not holding any counter spells. You're not getting to that Goldspan Dragon. And if Shota's able to play out a few threats, if he has something like a Pulukrinos into Elder Gargaroth curve, you're going to be in a lot of trouble with this hand from Shahar.
Shota's hand though also looking a little bit slower than in game number 1. That's a Jawari Disruption, I believe, sitting in hand, as well as Binding of the Old Gods and Seagate Restoration, Auron's Epiphany in the Foretell Zone.
Yeah, this curve works out pretty nicely for Shota. He's able to foretell on turn 2, recognizing that against this odd Temur deck, he doesn't need to leave up Jawari Disruption. And now he can use Jawari Disruption to counter either a 3-drop or a potential adventure spell from Shahar if he likes, or just tap out, put the Yorion in hand, knowing he has Binding in hand for the next play the Shahar makes.
I don't know if you can really describe one of the most popular strategies of the last 12 months as odd money.
I think it's by definition odd.
We'll let the viewers be the judge of that as we see Binding the Old Gods come down onto the battlefield. That's going to take care of Bone Crusher Giant, and no tax this time because it is an ability that is targeting Bone Crusher Giant, not a spell. Ooh, Goldspan Dragon, the draw for Shahar Shenhar.
Goldspan Dragon, a great draw. Something that's awkward for Shota at the moment is the way he's played out his hand, and this comes back to playing an untapped land on turn 3 to put Yorion in his hand rather than playing a tapped Triome. He doesn't have an untapped 5th land for next turn, so if Shahar plays out a creature like a Bone Crusher Giant here, Shota won't be able to play Yorion to blink Binding the Old Gods and get the extra removal spell. And Shahar playing this Bone Crusher Giant, knowing there's a Yorion in hand for Shota, is recognition that Shota paid 3 life to put an untapped land into play in the Seagate Restoration last turn. The chances that he has another untapped land in hand are pretty low, so I'm going to take the risk and play this Bone Crusher Giant and hope that Shota either plays around a Mystical Dispute or just straight up doesn't have the untapped land, which is what ends up happening.
What an excellent read there from Shahar Shenhar, and that's the exact kind of minute detail, just like what you were saying earlier about that Elspeth's Nightmare on the play versus on the draw, that really sets this caliber of player apart from, the rest of the pack.
Yeah, this is going well for Shahar so far. You do see him play around something like that Jwari Disruption by not just running Goldspan Dragon out there on 5, but Shota knows that he may be in trouble here and may need to force Shahar's hand. So we may see a sequence like casting Auron's Epiphany on the next turn, and if that resolves, then Shota may be getting the all clear to just go ahead and slam Cure Best the Sea God.
I love to see draft all-star Kiora Best the Sea God finally making waves in Standard. It's been a little while, but I'm really glad that this 7-mana enchantment has found its home in the constructed formats. Binding of the Old Gods goes away after its Chapter 3. Of course, there are no creatures on the battlefield for Shota to gain that Death Touch ability. Wow, and Shota's going to play it safe.
Yeah, he does have that untapped 7th land. Now, what we may see is him actually use this for a scry, play Yorion instead, or just play it safe, but I don't really know if actually passing here is playing it safe against this strategy that already has a Bone Crusher Giant and a Klothys on the battlefield. You're facing down so much damage, you could take as much as 6 this turn just from what is being presented with no real way to interact, just to draw a card from that Mazemind Tome.
I mean, you can't fault Shota's dedication to drawing cards.
You can't, and again, Shahar is a blue deck. He does have multiple untapped mana presented, so from Shota's point of view, he has to be afraid of potential counterspells in that position. If he goes for something like an Auron's Epiphany and it gets countered, he could very easily lose the game thanks to a Goldspan Dragon. So maybe playing a defensive game plan here, leaving up mana and trying to draw cards is the way to go, but unfortunately for him, he's falling further and further behind because Klothys is on the battlefield. Shahar doesn't have to act in order to win this game, and this is the worst case scenario for Shota now. Shahar has double Brazen Borrower that he can deploy at instant speed here. Those 2 3/1s are going to be lethal attackers. One of them is a lethal attacker with Klothys. So whatever Shota does here isn't actually going to do a great job of interacting with what Shahar has. So Shota may just need to play Auron's Epiphany and hope the Shahar doesn't have a counterspell. He needs those birds as blockers.
An excellent restraint as well from Shahar on the previous turn not to just slam that Goldspan Dragon down. I know a lot of players, myself included, would have been very tempted to just, here's my dragon. But Shahar, recognizing the board state and the situation, as you say, Mani, sitting back on this double Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, getting to play this flash game plan for Shahar now is so powerful because he's forcing Shota to act. This is the beautiful part of this game plan, and Shota just goes for the Hero Best, the Sea God, which is unfortunately just going to result in
Oh.
death, as Shahar knows he only needs to resolve one of these Brazen Borrowers. The best interaction Shota can have is a Mystical Dispute. That can at most counter one, and thanks to Clothis, that will not be enough to close out this game. Shahar knows he has this.
There you see it. One Brazen Borrower, two Brazen Borrowers, untap. Clothis, that's going to do 2 to the face, thanks to its upkeep trigger. Goldspan Dragon, now it's time for the big flyer, and Shota Yasooka extends the GGs. Shahar Shenhar takes down the Clash of the Titans 2-1.
Yeah, really unfortunate draw for Shota, but beautifully played by Shahar. Just makes sure to take his time, not play into the cards Shota may be holding, and that means that if Shota stumbles at all, Shahar can take advantage of it.